really taking a moment to sit down and ask yourself, what do I value? And what are the things I'm doing that are either conflicting that set of values, and finding out like, how do I really feel right now on a day-to-day basis? Getting real clear on what it is you value. Ask yourself, what's important to me? When you have that values framework and you have a very clear understanding of what that means to you, you can put the rest of the pieces in place.
Welcome back to Born SuperHuman. So today's guest is someone I've been trying to get on the podcast for a long time, and maybe the busiest person that I know. Well, that's because she's a dean at the Lionel University for Workforce Innovation and Curriculum. She's also a professor of exercise science, and that was at Laramie County Community College. These are all words that just don't flow off of my mouth.
I know, it's a bunch of alphabet soup.
Oh, it's so good. You've got a BS in exercise and sports science. You've got a master's in kinesiology and health. And yet you're so passionate, not about education, but sharing education. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on so badly, to make sure that you can share your wealth of knowledge to those people that truly want to improve their health and wellness in life. But before we even get to you in here, I have to say I read that you are more of an introvert than an extrovert, which is so fascinating because you have 3 podcasts, you're an author, you're a speaker, you're on stage, you're doing different stuff. So I couldn't be more happy to welcome the introvert, Dr. Erin Nitschke.
Thank you, Dan, so much. That's such a sweet introduction, and you have hit all the points. I am far more introverted than I am extroverted. I really got to dial it up for the work that I do, but I think I'm able to do that because I love the work that I do, and I love the reasons that I do it and the people that I serve. So I'm able to sort of kind of turn myself inside out. But man, after something like a speaking event or anything like that, I really got to take some time to recover.
But that's great because, again, we go back to your whole science side of recovery, because people think health and wellness is action, but
Right.
often the action is actually inaction within a structured setup.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask you, before we even get into this, the depth of your knowledge, because I know, and this is one of the things I should say as well, you put down that you are a science geek, right? That you love science. And so I really want to delve into really habits and things we should be doing, but also with a scientific undertone with it.
Sure.
But before we get there, and I've said that like 3 times now, before we get there, tell me about you as a young girl growing up. Is this what you wanted to do? How did you get into this line of excellence?
Such a great question. I think, as a child, I was always active. I was always running. And I mean, I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in the 80s. Don't have to give you my exact age because then I'm dating myself. But it was this time of free range children, right? We were always out running and encouraging. We were encouraged to be active, and we were encouraged to participate in these sports and do this and do that. And I always just enjoyed the feeling of movement and being active, and couple that with just the fact that I am an empath. I love helping people, and I love being able to support them on whatever journey they're on. And in college, I felt like I had found this, what is exercise science? It couples this notion of movement, which I love, but also the science behind it and what it means to acutely adapt to exercise, but then what are those chronic adaptations over time? And so it married my love for movement with that scientific evidence-based foundation, and also knowing that it could evolve into a career in which I either taught people, which I clearly have done, or I worked directly with people to help them on whatever wellness journey they're on. And I felt like at that point in my journey that, wow, I had found the right formula. I had found subject matter that I think is just so fascinating. It's fascinating because our field is not static. The only thing in our field that's static is probably anatomy, right? Like a femur is a femur. It's not going to change. But the way in which we discover how the body adapts is constantly changing. And we see all this new research coming out about various modalities. So it was something that I thought I could really put my love for science and research into a career that serves people in a way that helps them achieve the best versions of themselves.
That's fascinating because what we discover as children and it becomes a passion as we go through our teens and into early adult, so many people don't get to take that into their adult life and they let it behind.
Mhm.
What was your movement passion as a young girl? Were you into dancing? Was it more aerobics? What? Because I got to tell people you're a certified personal trainer. You've been that for over 23 years, which I'm not giving your age away. So you must have been certified when you were 1 years old. But
Wouldn't that have been great?
but
I wish
what
I was still in my 20s.
I'm sure you are brain health and body activity. But what was your passion in movement?
So I think for me, like as a young child, I loved to just run and ride my bike. And I had a basketball hoop in my driveway, and it would just be something I would go out and do because in that era, we didn't lean into things like video games, or we had less of a sedentary lifestyle. I walked to school or I rode my bike to school. I was fortunate to live fairly near my elementary and my high school. So it wasn't really a far cry for me to be able to walk or ride my bike, but that was just sort of the culture then. And it was also just the culture of the family that I grew up in. It was just what you did. And it felt
Mm.
good. And it was fun to be out in the sun in the summers and those endless summer days, as a kid. And it was just a variety of things. I tried organized sports, but as the introvert, I'm not a very competitive person. And I'm like, this is just not my bag. This is not my speed. I don't want to compete with somebody. I want to support them. So I tended to be more of the recreational athlete versus somebody in organized sports. Totally support them, totally understand their training modalities. It just wasn't something that was my passion and my love. So I tended to be more just movement for the sake of movement, go on a bike ride, go on a walk, go on a run. My family spent a lot of time up in the Bighorns. And so we were always hiking or doing something like that. So it was very much a variety, but not necessarily in an organized, structured, typical definition of exercise. It was more physical activity.
And I love that because so many people around the health and fitness grew up, like myself, in competitive sports or falling in love with bodybuilding or working out. I was an aerobics instructor. In fact, ACE, who I know, the American Academy of Exercise, that was my very first certification back in England as a step aerobics instructor. And
Cool.
so, we go into that, but where you come from relates to what I would say is the vast majority of people in the world that just want to be healthy and do what they love. They're not addicted to the muscles or the look or the power that comes from it on a secondary becoming a primary level.
Yeah.
Let's go into discussing the passion and the power
Mm.
of movement exercise. And let's start the differences between how we should be looking at from 30 to, let's go 40 to 50, 30, 40, 50. And then what happens after 50 and the changes that we go in, because I think so many people say, oh, when I hit 50, I felt a change. When I hit 60, oh God, I felt, you don't know what it's like. Tell us about how exercise movement starts correlating between the ages of like 30 to 50 and then 50 onwards.
Yeah, absolutely great question. That is the demographic of specifically women that I coach and I work with. And I'm one of those women. Like I felt that change at age 40 and I was like, what is happening here? Um, and I think I see this evolution of the reasons for which people move is different in their 20s and 30s than it is later in life because they don't feel necessarily that shift in energy or that palpable change. I think there's something interesting that happens in the 40s, and I have no specific research paper to back this. This is very anecdotal and based on 23 years of experience, and also living in that space of the my age span right now. I feel like in the 40s, people are sort of this like sandwich generation. They are supporting aging parents, but they're also at the same time raising young children. And that's a really interesting dynamic. And I think fatigue and stress play a huge role in that physical shift that we feel, aside from hormonal changes that the body is going through and the way in which their body is changing because they are in this new phase of life. And I feel like the reasons for which my clients exercise now is for a feeling, not an aesthetic, if that makes sense. It's more because they come with this notion of, I'm caring for my aging parents right now, and I've got a 10-year-old that's really active in sports and we're traveling all the time and I am tired. I want to find a better way to have more energy and still be present in my life and still engage in it as an active participant rather than somebody that's just passively allowing time to just, that sand to slip through the hourglass without them really being a participant. And I feel like there is this unique shift at that point in life versus when somebody is in their 20s and 30s. And also the techniques that we use when we get to a certain point, like I'd say late 30s, 40s, those techniques that we used in our 20s don't don't work the same way. The body doesn't respond the same way. We're constantly in this state of evolution, and there's a huge evolution that goes on at that midpoint in life. And then we start to see that the body doesn't respond the same way, or our values start to shift. I should say, and our values start to shift. It's not necessarily one or the other, but we start to appreciate more the need for energy versus like achieving a specific aesthetic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I know when I look back at it, one of your favorite books that put down as something that's inspired you was Brain Rules by John Medina.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer that we're influenced by what comes into our brain, and what goes into the brain goes out into the body. So how much do you feel that the shift from the responsibility from 30 to 40s and then older, like you said, raising children, caring for aging parents, is predispositioned for us to expect it and expect the struggle because of society's stuff, or how much is actually really the change in our body? And to couple that, how important is it for us to be around younger people? Because I think we become our environment. So
Yeah.
when mothers hang around with mothers who are struggling on both fronts, we share that struggle. Whereas if you're around young children more, does that keep you more youthful?
I think that's a really interesting question. And yes, Brain Rules is a fantastic read. I think it's very user-friendly neuroscience. I am not a neuroscientist and cannot go into any depth, but that read is so fascinating to me. And of course, we know that exercise, both resistance training and aerobic, as well as mind body and dual tasking and all of those types of approaches do help stave off cognitive decline and do support this notion of mental fitness and brain fitness. But I do think mindset plays a role. We can talk ourselves into a lot of ailments, and we can also talk ourselves into a better space. It's true, there is a mind body connection. And I'm not talking just about like yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, Qigong, any of those things. There is a mind body connection. And I feel like if we don't take care of our minds, our bodies will suffer. And vice versa is true. It's a very back and forth relationship. And I do think mindset plays a role. And we absolutely know from research, environment affects us, right? Like we take cues from our environment, and it can influence us to eat more, or eat less, or move more, or move less, or think this way or think that way. Environment is so powerful. There's why there are whole behavior change theories that incorporate environmental effects into the understanding of what makes people tick. Why do they behave the way that they do? So, absolutely, I do think when it comes to surrounding yourself, I don't know that it necessarily can be as dichotomous as old versus young, aging versus young, but it's almost like the mindset of the people around you impacts your own mindset. Like we draw from there's always that notion of peer pressure, right? And peer pressure can go in a very positive direction, and it can support the wellness goals you're trying to achieve. And peer pressure can go in the opposite direction, and it can become a detractor of what you're trying to achieve. So I almost think it comes down to not so much the younger category of people or middle aged or older. It comes down to like, who are you surrounding yourself and what is their mindset and what are the things that they're interested in and how do they behave and what are the things they're doing that support themselves in achieving, we'll say, whatever wellness goal it happens to be. I think that's the important part. I think that's what matters, is surrounding yourself with people that have a positive mindset or that think in ways that align with your values and can tangentially support you in whatever goal you're trying to achieve physically, emotionally, intellectually, any dimension of wellness, you can throw it in there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I haven't thought of this until you started talking. So thanks for opening my mind up. But I look back to when I was a head coach on the Olympic program and being around youthful, driven
Mhm.
athletes that were fighting for a dream kept me young. Then
Sure.
I ended up creating this balance training system where I was around a lot more senior people. So we take an age range of like 14 to 22, and suddenly I'm like 60 to 80. And you brought up a great point. The energy of both sets were very similar because they were both there because they wanted to improve. But to your point, today's youth that spend more time playing video games and not as active don't necessarily bring the same energy to the environment just because of age. I love that. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah.
So now what would you say then is actionable items or things that you teach for people that are now in this transition phase of no longer young and yet not old, different perspective on what's important in life, less time for themselves. Take us through your passion for taking people back to their best life.
That's a great question. It's a beautiful question as well. And one of the things I like to do with clients or with anyone is a values assessment. Like our values shift over time, just like a philosophy would shift over time. It's meant to be fluid and you're meant to be able to evolve and respond in ways that align with where you're at in your life. And I think sometimes and it could very much be the American culture, right? Like we're work hard, we're production, we're answer emails at all hours, we're like this insane culture of just like always work, and where rest becomes a reward versus a right. And I think because of cultural influences there is this sort of muting of what is important to you as the person, not you as the accountant, not you as the this or the that, you as the person. What are the things that you value? And I spend a lot of time motivationally interviewing my clients, and I do this with my children. And my almost 11-year-old is like, "Are you coaching me right now? I know what you're doing." She's a smart cookie. But it's important to ask those questions and help people get so clear on what are your values. And after I have a conversation with a client, it's interesting because they'll come to me and be like, I want to lose 30 pounds. And then it's like we dig into the why of it. And this conversation gets deeper and we start peeling back all of these layers and uncovering these things. And what's left at the end is a set of values. So I think the first action step is like get clear on your values, get clear on what matters to you. What gets you up in the morning? How do you want to feel? If you were to project 6 months down the road, what does a best version of yourself feel like? Not look like, feel like. What is it? Is it I'm more energetic? I have more desire to go out and go on adventures or travel or any of those things. Get so clear on what matters to you. And I think the second thing is boundary setting. I think in part it's the culture we live in, but I also believe I call it a clarity that happens I felt it at age 40. Midlife has a way of clarifying for you what you are willing to tolerate and what you are not willing to tolerate. So instead of sacrificing, like doing things for the sake of doing them or participating in things you don't really want to do, or maybe you don't have the energetic space or mind space for, it is absolutely okay to get clear on your boundaries. And I think those are the first two things that are necessary. What do you value? And how are you going to behave in ways that support those values or allow you to keep those values at the forefront so you are in alignment as you move forward? What are the boundaries? What are your non negotiables? And then from there, I think rest has to be at the top of the list. I know that there's this undercurrent of no rest days and always grind and just this insanity that's like, no, we don't have time for that. And not even so much that is we don't have a desire for it. And it's also not supporting you physically. So rest is a right that you have to participate in. It's also when your brain cleans itself. It's when repair work takes place. It's when your soul has a moment of peace. So, no longer sacrificing sleep or simply just being like, I don't have the energy for that right now. I'm going to take this time for myself, even if it's 15 minutes, if it's 20 minutes, maybe it's a day rest. I'm not saying that turns into 3 weeks off of what it is you're doing physically, but it is something that to be mindful of. Is like, how am I feeling in myself right now? Am I able to bring my best self into this workout? And if you're not, then dial back the workout. It's okay. Or I like to operate by the 10-minute rule. There are some days where I'm like, I do not want to do this. I want to do it because my kids have been feral this week and I've had back-to-back meetings from 8 to 5 every day, or I've done this speaking engagement or this article or something like that. And I have to kind of talk myself. And then I'm like, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes. I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it. And like at that 10-minute mark, something happens where it's like, well, I'm already here and I'm doing it and I'm awake and let's go. And then pretty soon you're 30 minutes in or you're 40 minutes in. So I think those are some of the top action items I would say that you've got to start with understanding who you are, what you value, what your boundaries are, what you're willing to tolerate. Are you rested? Because if we're not rested, we don't have the ability to make good decisions for ourselves mentally or physically.
We're told growing up to expect something at a certain age. I can train just as hard now as I did at 60. Well, not quite 60, but getting closer to that age. But the difference is we used to recover without thinking about it because of the
Yeah.
energy in the cells. We used to sleep more. We had less responsibility in life itself.
Less
So
stress.
now, so much. But now I found that part of my training is recovery. So when we make it part of our daily activity, now we're actually able to train better, which means we get better results with less work. And it's the old adage, right? Oh, I used to say, I'm so busy. Oh, Erin, yeah, I'm so busy. I got so much on my plate, as if it was a Medal of Honor.
Right.
And until I heard someone say, I've got a lot of spare time right now. And I went, that's what I want. And we can create it because it's not a lack of time, it's a lack of discipline of time.
Yeah, and boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you have 4 dogs.
I do. I have 4 dogs and a cat. I
And
have
how
a
many
mini
children?
too.
How many children?
Too.
2 children. So, and you got all these other things you do. So you must be an expert in prioritizing and probably having your children do some of the work as well.
I will say I'm not an expert, but I am practiced.
Yeah, that's so brilliant. So, what do you find now if you said we've sat down with the client or with a friend, you've started looking why? Because until you know your why, what is it behind the movement to get moving? You can't really guarantee you're going to stay on it because so many people we know quit after a couple of weeks. They get burnt out or they're not passionate
Yeah.
about it.
Yep. Hmm.
Once you know that, and then you see where you would like to feel in 6 months' time, as you say it, what then do you advise them to do in their own life to start supporting the work you're going to give them?
One of the things I really like to do is a time inventory. And so I like to ask people to take a look at like, how are you spending your time? Where does your time go? Because oftentimes we hear that notion of, like you said, I'm so busy and I have no time. So one of the questions I ask is, take me through what your day is like. And it's amazing to me when I have them do just this little like mini time study. I give them a journal to fill out and it's like I want you to tell me like what does your morning look like, your rising time, and when you sit down to work and what your commute looks like and what your lunch break looks like. And it's amazing how just in I have them do it for 7 days and it's amazing the patterns that emerge that they then become aware of when they look at it. Like, oh, I haven't taken a lunch break. I've given myself no lunch this week and I've eaten at my desk. Or at night, I come home and I make dinner and then I fall asleep on the couch because I did not go to bed until midnight the night before and I got up at 4:30 a.m. And sometimes it's that level of awareness, right? Like I like to use data to understand the story. I'm a scientist, right? Like data informs how we move forward. We are an evidence-based field. It is important to take into account all of those metrics, but take them together so it's not in isolation. And so I like to have an understanding of like what their life looks like because the question then becomes what is realistic for you? Because I can write the best program for somebody, but if there is not a realistic component to it and it doesn't fit in their lifestyle, it doesn't match their joy, it doesn't match what they've been successful at in the past, it's not going to matter how great the program is. Because, like you said, adherence is going to become the problem in 7 days, 14 days, a month. It's different for everybody, right? So, having an understanding, not just for myself as their coach, but for them as the client, because if we are not aware of what we don't track. And I'm not saying it has to be an every single day, every single calorie, every single thing, but can we create an awareness? And from there, that's where this program can emerge, and the program does include rest. I program in rest days. Like I am telling you, this is these are your active rest days. This is what you need to do. And once we have that awareness, I can ask the question of like, what feels good to you? If you were to start now, what are some things that interest you? And I give them the autonomy to tell me what they're interested in versus me giving them this very prescriptive kind of cookie cutter, do this, and you'll get these results. Because the truth is, if they're not going to adhere to it, again, it can be the best program, but if they're not going to adhere to it and they don't enjoy it and they're not consistent with it, they will not get those results, even though the program is intended to yield those results. So I like to start with that awareness piece and that time study and getting a real close understanding of what does your Monday look like versus your Sunday. And that then helps me to help them overcome whatever perceived barriers are in their way. It also helps plan for high risk situations. Say I've got a client that travels a lot and that we've got a huge trip coming up and that's where they really struggle. Great, let's take a look at it and let's put some strategies in place that you can lean on so you're not relying on willpower the whole time. Like willpower is inherently limited. We know this, right? People don't need more willpower. They need strategies to conserve it. Of course, when you continue to rely on willpower, it's going to run out. So I think just going back to the foundation of it all is like, let's create a sense of awareness because yeah, they live the day-to-day life, but how attuned is any one person when they are approaching their days from I got to do this, that, and the other. I have a to-do list. I have to get the kids ready for school. I have to make breakfast. I have to commute. I have to do my work. I have this meeting. I have that meeting. I got to get groceries. I got to da-da-da-da. All of the things. And it's like this ticker tape, right? It's this lengthy to-do list that never seems to end. And we're approaching our days that way. And so creating a sense of awareness allows them to understand like where these pockets of time could be better used. And then we start there. What would it look like if you took a 30-minute lunch break and then you spent 15 minutes walking? Get some exercise in the day, neat movement, some steps. What would that look like? And sometimes it's trial and error, right? Like right out of the gate, you're not going to get it 100% right. And the client's going to be like, I tried it and I don't like it. Great, let's come back and let's figure this out. So that's where I like to start with clients, right or wrong. It seems to be an effective strategy that I've found.
No, it's great because, again, it's not fixed. It really is about each person finding what they enjoy doing and then making the time to do it, because we know that physical activity has a direct impact on brain health.
Yes.
And the brain has to be healthy to guide the body as well as the everyday actions.
Yeah.
It brought up a point again. You keep bringing up these points as I'm thinking. When I was coaching, I'd coach girls' teams and I'd coach boys' teams. What I found on the boys' teams, they wanted to be around the best player. They didn't mind if someone was not a very nice person, but they were a great player. They wanted them on their team because they wanted to win. But on the girls' teams, they could have a great person, but if they didn't like her, they didn't want her on the team. They prefer to have a lesser quality player, but a nicer person. because that's the environment they wanted. How important is it for people to find groups that help support their passion? So we've got you as the trainer, as the advisor, as the mentor, and the client. And yet not everybody's going to have that. How important is it to go and find a group that you love being part of? Because that's half the fear that people go, well, I feel a little uncomfortable. I don't want to go.
I think that's a great question. And we know from research that social support is a huge predictor of success and adherence to programs and to achieving long-term behavior change. I think it is critically important that people find their power circle, right? It doesn't have to be big because it doesn't, it's not about the size of the circle. It's about the energy within that circle that allows you to pursue what it is that you feel is in alignment with your values because you've got this cheering squad. And in turn, there's a reciprocity, right? You find that circle and you return it. You do the same thing to the people in that circle. I think it's vastly important. And I always say that like one of the lessons that I've learned in the last 23 years is nobody achieves success alone. And I think there is serious truth to that. There is no way I would be where I'm at without amazing people cheering me on and supporting me. And I think the same is said for clients and finding a circle of people that are authentic, genuine, that are going to cheer you on, but then you can return those same things to them. I think those people need to align with your values because otherwise there's a certain measure of toxicity that can occur if it's only about the number of people in your circle or it's about competition.
So what would you say? Okay, we've got 5 minutes of you standing in front of a group and inspiring them to want to take a step or take action. What are truly the benefits that you've discovered through the science research and the hands-on, real life experience? The value of exercising, and is it ever a case that it's too late to start?
Yeah, great question. It is never too late. We know that. I think one of the biggest benefits is just it's an act of self-care and self-love. You get one body. It is the place that you live. So how can you move in ways that make that vessel feel good? Not just so you can feel confident in a certain outfit, but how do you work now to be healthy later on? Like there's a longevity piece to it. And I think the longevity piece is really important because culturally, and I'm speaking for the United States, we have this conversation about longevity and longevity medicine and longevity wellness and all of these things, but we're also in a culture that chronically underfunds preventative care. So there's an access piece as well. And I think when one of the benefits of movement and not just movement but like all the pieces of wellness, like how we fill each of those pieces in that larger pie or that larger puzzle is going to increase, it's not lifespan, but it's like how well you live later in your later years so that you're there for your family, you get more life experience, you get more joy out of it. And that I think is the primary benefit. And unfortunately with social media and kind of the wellness influencer type of messaging, it's all about the look, right? It's all about the aesthetics. And so no wonder people don't adhere because we're telling them, we influencers are telling them, do this booty burn workout for 20 minutes and you'll look like X. It's not how it works. Scientifically, that is not how it works. But that's the message. And so they do that and then it doesn't happen. And then it's like, well, I don't know why I'm doing this. The greater value is in how you feel and how you move pain-free, unrestricted, able to complete activities of daily living, doing something as simple as playing soccer in the park with your kids or going on an adventure walk, or say you want to travel and you're going to Eastern Europe. There's a lot of walking involved. So, you know, having that mindset of like what it does holistically for the whole person and not about a look, I think is the biggest benefit to really start talking about. And I think flipping that narrative is important because for so long, it's literally been about six-pack abs and it's been about, an aesthetic value. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to look look and feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it becomes the primary value, we're missing out on a whole bunch of other benefits like brain health, staving off cognitive decline, especially if there's a predisposition in the family for something like Alzheimer's or dementia. There are things we can do now that benefit us in the moment, but also benefit us later on and reduce disease risk overall.
What do you think is the biggest impact for the chronic state of disease that Americans are now facing? When if you look, 30, 40 years ago, it was a very healthy nation.
I think there's probably several variables at play. I think part of it is cultural. You compare the United States to other countries, and we aren't well by a lot of standards. I think there's a cultural piece. It's that consumerism, it's the way in which we place such an enormous value on production and on work and on getting it all done right now, right? Like there's not a great cultural work-life balance. And I think that's something that is a whole other podcast if I am going to offer that. But I do think there is a cultural piece to it that we would be silly to ignore and to not acknowledge. I think there's that. I think the way in which life has changed and the tools that we have at our disposal is also something that is has influenced. Like if you just look back again, like what I started saying about being a child of the 80s and 90s, that looked so different than my kids' childhood these days. So there's that variable of just the evolution of life and what it looks like. And we don't have a lot of manual labor. We don't have lives. We have lives of convenience. There's a
Mhm.
lot of things we can do from our phone. There's a lot of things we can do from our computer. So that certainly is playing a role. There's a greater incidence of sedentary lifestyle because of the way we work and because of the way we unwind. It's not so much about going for a post dinner walk. It's like I'm going to sit and do the doom scroll on Instagram and look at funny reels. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a funny reel and I like to do that too. But there's just more and more of that. And I think if you look back 30 years ago, it was not that way. So we've sort of like engineered our way into this lifestyle. On one hand, there's a lot of benefits, right? I love being able to simply sit down and make an appointment from my phone. I don't have to go anywhere. But you take all that together, all that convenience, and we wrap it up, and we've reduced the amount of time that we're active. And I think that plays a huge role into it. And I think that's a big challenge that we're facing. Now, I also think healthcare is broken. Again, like I said, there's an access piece to preventative care, and we chronically underfund it. So that's problematic. So the people that need these services to help reduce their chronic disease rate and or mitigate the effects of something they are balancing or battling, there's an access piece that's just not, it's just not there. Or we've got longevity medicine, also an access piece that is more of a concierge service and pretty high dollar. So there's some holes I think all over the place that it's a leaky bucket, I guess if I had to say give you a metaphor for it. It's kind of a leaky bucket. A lot of really great things that are happening, but we've also kind of engineered ourselves, the society into this lifestyle that we're living that hasn't done us a lot of favors in terms of the wellness piece.
Yeah, I agree so much. I look back at society 30 years ago where it was mandatory to have physical education in schools and people participated, didn't matter what your level is, you got up and moved. And
Yes.
then that slowly got taken out because of funding. And then
Yes.
parents had to pay for it. And then doctors used to tell patients, get out and move, get out and into the sunshine, get out and go for a walk. Now it's take this pill and sit down. It's not the pill necessarily that's the problem, it's the sitting down. And
Yes.
there's a saying that you actually use the word I love. One of my sayings, aging is the excessive pursuit of sedentary comfort,
Mm.
which is now starting at a younger age because
Yes.
we don't want to work. And so it's now becoming part of a pandemic, really, of lack of activity. I would love to have you back on the podcast
Yeah.
coming
Please.
up and really dig deeper into not just your philosophy, because philosophy is one thing, real life experience is what excites me. What are we really seeing? But to finish this one, I'd love for you to, what is something you would love to leave everyone with to inspire them to become a greater version of them, because it is possible?
Great question, loaded question. I think honestly, really taking a moment to sit down and ask yourself, what do I value? And what are the things I'm doing that are either conflicting that set of values or simply just not supporting them? And finding out, like, how do I really feel right now on a day to day basis? Like checking in with your energy, your sleep, your mood, how engaged you feel in your own life, or are you just this sort of passive participant? Getting real clear on what it is you value. Ask yourself, what's important to me? And start there, because when you have that values framework and you have a very clear understanding of what that means to you, you can put the rest of the pieces in place, because you will start making these active choices that support, I value time with my children. How do I get more time with my kids? What am I doing now that is detracting from that value, from that time with my kids? And I think we just don't ask ourselves that enough, because we're so busy producing. We're so busy checking the little check boxes off our to-do list. In part, that's how we live. And yeah, some things need to get done. I'm not disputing that by any means, but pause 15 minutes, sit down, ask yourself, what is it I value? And how do I start putting those as priorities versus they come after, is like, well, I'll deal with that when I'm done with this.
That's beautiful. There's a saying that I teach, which is self-love is not selfish, it's essential. And
Mhm.
when you come back on, I want to remember to delve into the psychological impact of growing up,
Mm,
where is part of training also addressing, maybe with a therapist, why we don't love ourselves, why we become service and a servant rather than allowing ourselves to be served sometimes either by ourselves or others. So it's fascinating
mm.
conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your time with all of us.
Thank
And where
you.
can people find you? Because I know you also have blogs out there, because I went and read them.
Yes, absolutely. You're always free to email me. It's erinmd03@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram at Nitschke Erin. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook. You can find my work at ACE. It's really, you could just do a Google.
I was going to say that's what I did. I did Erin Nitschke, and
I was
suddenly
gonna
I saw
say,
like 17 pages of like clicking and clicking and clicking. So
I was amazed at how many things you knew. I was like, did I tell him that?
it's a beautiful thing. Erin, I got to say, Dr. Erin, full respect. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And I look forward to bringing you back on and having
Yes.
an even deeper conversation.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thank you.